Billionaire gave a pregnant woman a ride. When they arrived, a little boy with his face greeted them. He turned pale. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the journey. Logan Pierce surveyed the Seattle skyline from his penthouse office, the city lights blurring through raindrops that streaked across the floor-to-ceiling windows. His reflection stared back at him. Impeccably tailored suit, patrician features, eyes that financial. Journalists called calculating. At 42, he'd built Horizon Technologies into a global powerhouse. The business press called him a visionary. Forbes estimated his worth at $12 billion. And yet, here he stood, alone at midnight, feeling absolutely nothing. His phone buzzed. The board meeting was moved to 8 a.m. Another acquisition was pending. More money, more expansion, more of the same endless cycle. Logan loosened his tie and headed to the private elevator. His Bentley waited in the underground garage, engine purring to life at his approach. The rain had intensified, dropping in sheets across the windshield as he navigated the deserted downtown streets. Near Pioneer Square, he slowed at a red light, wipers fighting to clear his view. That's when he saw her. A pregnant woman huddled beneath a narrow awning, one hand protectively curved around her belly, the other clutching a tattered umbrella that had clearly lost its battle with the wind. Something about her posture, dignity despite desperation, made his finger hover over the window control. He never stopped, never deviated from plan. Yet he found himself lowering the passenger window. "Do you need a ride?" The words felt foreign in his mouth. She hesitated, eyes wary as rain pelted her shoulders. Thunder rolled overhead, making her decision for her. She nodded once and hurried to the car. "Thank you," she murmured, settling into the butter-soft leather. Water dripped from her jacket onto the immaculate interior. Logan noticed but said nothing. "Where to?" he asked. "Oak Ridge Heights," she replied, "a working-class neighborhood miles from this affluent district." They drove in silence, Logan occasionally glancing at his unexpected passenger. She was younger than him, perhaps early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a damp ponytail. There was something vaguely familiar about her profile that nagged at him. "You're Logan Pierce," she finally said. "Not a question." "I am." He kept his eyes on the road. "Have we met?" She gave a small, sad smile. "Once, a long time ago." The wipers kept their metronomic rhythm as Logan tried to place her. He'd met thousands of people over the years, employees, investors, journalists, women at charity galas whose names evaporated by morning. "I'm Olivia," she offered. "Olivia Mitchell." The name triggered nothing, yet her voice held a certainty that unsettled him. When they reached a small duplex in Oak Ridge Heights, she thanked him again. Logan, driven by an impulse he couldn't name, said, "Let me walk you to the door, it's still pouring." She seemed about to refuse, then glanced at her soaked clothes and nodded. They approached the house together, Logan holding his jacket over her. Before they reached the steps, the front door swung open. A small boy, perhaps 5 years old, stood in the doorway. "Mommy, you're home." Logan froze. The world seemed to tilt beneath his feet. The boy's eyes, the same striking gray as his own, widened as he looked up at Logan. "Who are you?" the child asked. But Logan couldn't answer. He was looking at his own face, rendered in miniature. Logan stood transfixed on the doorstep, rain soaking through his expensive suit as he stared at the child before him. The boy's eyes, his eyes, looked back with innocent curiosity. "Mason, this is Mr. Pierce," Olivia said softly. "He gave Mommy a ride home in the storm." The boy nodded solemnly. "Thank you for helping my mom. Her car broke again." Logan couldn't find his voice. His mind raced through calculations, possibilities, implications, the way it did before major acquisitions. But this wasn't business, this was. "Come inside," Olivia said, her voice breaking his trance. "We need to talk." The interior of the duplex was modest but well kept. Textbooks were stacked on a small dining table, Nursing school materials, Logan noted distantly. Mason disappeared into a bedroom after Olivia promised him a snack later. He's mine, Logan finally said. Not a question. Olivia nodded, one hand resting protectively on her belly. Yes, and so is this one. Logan sank onto a worn couch, his world shifting on its axis. How? When? 6 years ago. I was temping in your HR department during the NeuroSync merger. Her voice was calm, but her fingers twisted nervously in her sweater. We met at the company celebration. You probably don't remember. It was one night and you were gone to Tokyo the next morning. Fragments of memory surfaced. Champagne, laughter, dark eyes that saw past his facade. A brief connection in a life of calculated transactions. Why didn't you tell me? His voice sounded hollow to his own ears. I tried. Bitterness edged her words. 3 times your assistant said you were unavailable. Your security escorted me out the 3rd time. I got the message. Logan closed his eyes. Victoria, his chief of staff, was ruthlessly efficient at protecting his time. How many other important things had been filtered away? I was young and scared, Olivia continued. By the time I realized I was pregnant, you were on the cover of Fortune with your new fiancé. That engagement ended years ago, Logan said quietly. By then, I'd built a life for us. I didn't want Mason to be a complication in yours. She paused. Then 4 months ago, I found out about this one. Life has a sense of humor, I guess. Logan studied the living room. Children's drawings magnetized to the refrigerator, a toy truck, half hidden under the coffee table, medical bills stacked by an ancient laptop, a real life messy and genuine in ways his sterile penthouse never was. Why tell me now? He asked. I didn't plan to. The universe apparently had other ideas when it broke my car in a storm outside your building. She smiled faintly. Mason asks, about his father. I've never known what to say. Logan stood abruptly, pacing the small room. He'd navigated billion-dollar deals with less adrenaline than he felt now. I need to be part of their lives, he said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. Olivia's eyes widened. Logan, I didn't tell you this to trap you or ask for money. That's not what I meant. He stopped pacing, suddenly clear. I've missed 5 years. I won't miss any more. A cry from the bedroom interrupted them. Mom, I'm hungry. Coming, honey. Olivia called, then turned back to Logan. This isn't a business decision. Children need consistency, not just resources. Logan met her gaze directly. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Outside, the storm continued, but inside Logan's mind, something shifted permanently into place. For the first time in years, he felt fully awake. Logan woke at dawn on Olivia's couch, his back stiff and his mind racing. Sunlight filtered through worn curtains, illuminating a home filled with evidence of the life he'd missed. Mason's backpack by the door, a growth chart penciled on the kitchen doorframe, tiny shoes lined up by the entrance. He reached for his phone, scrolling past dozens of missed calls and messages from Victoria and his executive team. Instead, he dialed Richard Winters, his most trusted investigator. I need everything on Olivia Mitchell, he whispered, moving toward the bathroom for privacy. Medical records, financial situation, employment history, everything, and keep this between us. Trouble? Richard asked, familiar with Logan's occasional, need to vet potential threats. No, Logan replied, surprising himself with the truth. Family. After hanging up, Logan found Mason standing in the hallway, observing him with that unnerving, gray-eyed stare. Mom says you're rich, the boy stated flatly. Logan knelt to meet his son's eyes. I am. Then why do you look sad all the time? The question hit Logan like a physical blow. Before he could formulate an answer, Olivia appeared in the kitchen doorway, her pregnancy more noticeable in morning light. Mason, breakfast is ready, she said, shooting Logan an apologetic glance. Over cereal and toast, Logan learned their routine. Mason's elementary school, Olivia's nursing classes, her evening shifts at Providence Hospital. A precarious balance, that the difficult pregnancy was threatening to topple. "I'm on bed rest next week," Olivia explained quietly while Mason brushed his teeth. "My mother's coming to help, but she can only stay through the month." Logan watched her unconsciously, rub her lower back, exhaustion evident in every movement. "Let me help," he said, "not just money. Time. Presence." Olivia studied him skeptically. "Your life doesn't exactly have room for school pickups and doctor appointments." "I'll make room." The conviction in his voice surprised them both. Logan accompanied them to Mason's school, feeling strangely self-conscious in his rumpled designer suit among parents in work clothes and uniforms. Mason hesitated at the entrance. "Are you coming back?" he asked, eyes serious beneath unruly hair so similar to Logan's own. "Yes," Logan promised, the word feeling like an oath. After dropping Mason off, they returned to Olivia's duplex in uncomfortable silence. "This isn't a novelty, Olivia," Logan finally said. "I need to know my children." "And when the novelty wears off," she challenged, "when board meetings and global expansions call, children aren't projects you can delegate when something more interesting comes along." Logan's phone buzzed incessantly, Victoria making her 15th attempt to reach him. "Take it," Olivia sighed. "Reality's calling." Instead, Logan silenced the phone. "I've built an empire based on recognizing what matters. I've been wrong about what that is." His phone lit up again. Richard, not Victoria. The investigator never called unless it was urgent. Logan excused himself to answer. "You need to see this," Richard said without preamble. "Her medical bills are catastrophic. The pregnancy is high risk. Gestational diabetes, possible preeclampsia. She's about to lose the house. Been making partial payments to keep utilities on instead." Logan felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Fear, but not for himself. "Handle it," he instructed, "all of it, anonymously for now." Returning to the living room, he found Olivia asleep on the couch, one hand protectively curved around her belly. The sight awakened something primal in him, a fierce protective instinct he'd never felt before. His empire could wait. This couldn't. The morning light cast long shadows across Olivia's small kitchen as Logan prepared coffee, his movements tentative in the unfamiliar space. He'd sent his driver to collect fresh clothes and necessities from his penthouse, drawing curious glances from neighbors when the luxury SUV pulled up. Olivia emerged from her bedroom, hair damp from a shower, surprise registering on her face. At the sight of Logan Pierce, billionaire tech mogul, awkwardly flipping pancakes in her kitchen. "You're still here," she said, lowering herself carefully into a chair. "I said I would be." Logan slid a plate toward her. "Fair warning, these are the first pancakes I've made since college." She took a cautious bite. Not bad for an amateur. The strange domesticity of the moment hung between them, neither fully comfortable yet neither willing to break it. "We need to talk," Logan said, sitting across from her. "About everything." Olivia met his gaze steadily. "Ask what you need to ask. Why didn't you push harder to reach me?" The question had burned in him all night. "You were carrying my child." Anger flashed across her face. "You think I didn't try? After the third time being treated like some gold digger by your staff, I got the message. Your world made it very clear I wasn't welcome. If I had known..." "Would it have mattered?" she interrupted. "Your life was acquisitions and expansions. The papers called you the Ice King for how ruthlessly you built your empire. What room was there for a pregnant temp worker?" Logan flinched at the accuracy of her assessment. 6 years ago, he'd been obsessed with growth at all costs. Horizon Technologies had been his only focus. "You're right," he admitted. "Back then I might not have been ready, but you should have had the choice." Olivia's expression softened slightly. "That's surprisingly honest." "I'm trying something new," he replied. "It's called not hiding from reality." A small smile curved her lips before fading. "What happens now, Logan? You can't just insert yourself into our lives without disruption. Mason has a routine. Stability." "Stability?" Logan challenged gently. "You're about to lose the house. You're working nights while pregnant with a high-risk condition. Her face hardened. You had me investigated? I needed to understand what I'm walking into. That's exactly the problem. Olivia pushed back from the table. People aren't acquisitions to be researched and leveraged. Our lives aren't a company for you to restructure. Logan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I'm trying to help. By invading my privacy? Making decisions without consulting me? That's not help, that's control. The accusation hit home. Control was his default setting, in business, in relationships, in every aspect of his life. The front door opened before he could respond, and Mason burst in accompanied by an elderly woman who froze at the sight of Logan. Mom, Ms. Bennett let me leave early because I finished my math first, Mason announced proudly before noticing the tension. Are you fighting? No, sweetheart, Olivia assured him. This is just a grown-up discussion. The older woman narrowed, her eyes at Logan. You must be the father. Barbara, Olivia sighed. This is Logan Pierce. Logan, this is Barbara Martinez, our neighbor who watches Mason after school. Logan extended his hand, which Barbara accepted with obvious reluctance. Mr. Pierce was just leaving, Olivia said pointedly. Logan recognized the dismissal but stood his ground. Actually, I thought Mason might like to get ice cream. He looked at his son. If that's okay with you? Mason's eyes widened. Can I, Mom? Please? Olivia's expression wavered between resistance and recognition of her son's excitement. 1 hour, she finally conceded. And just around the corner, not some fancy place downtown. As Logan left with Mason, he heard Barbara asking Olivia what was really going on. Life getting complicated, was Olivia's tired response. Walking beside his silent son, Logan realized that for all his business acumen, he had no roadmap for this most important venture of his life. The neighborhood ice cream shop was nothing like the artisanal gelaterias Logan frequented in Milan or New York, but Mason's face lit up as if they'd entered a palace. The boy studied the display case with scientific precision, while Logan studied him, cataloging each familiar feature. The determined set of his jaw, the analytical gaze, the slight furrow of concentration. What's your favorite? Logan asked, breaking the silence. Mason looked up, momentarily surprised at being addressed. Cookie dough, but Mom says it's a special treat because it costs more. Something twisted in Logan's chest. The idea that his son had been taught to consider the cost difference between ice cream flavors while Logan routinely spent thousands on wine he barely tasted. Cookie dough it is, Logan said. I'll have the same. As they sat at a small table by the window, Mason regarded Logan carefully over his cone. Are you really my dad? Logan nearly choked on his ice cream. What makes you ask that? Mom has a picture of you in her drawer, and my friend Jacob's dad left before he was born too. But he came back. The simplicity of the child's assessment left Logan momentarily speechless. I didn't know about you, he finally managed. If I had known, I would have been here. Mason considered this with surprising gravity for a 5-year-old. Mom says sometimes grown-ups make complicated choices. Your mom is very wise, Logan said, wondering what else Olivia had told their son. But not coming to find you wasn't my choice. It was a mistake that I want to fix. Mason licked his ice cream thoughtfully. Are you going to live with us now? I don't know yet, but I'm going to be around a lot more. Would that be okay with you? Instead of answering directly, Mason asked, Do you know how to fix things? Our sink makes funny noises, and Mom says we can't afford a plumber right now. By the time they returned to the duplex, Logan had committed to fixing not just the sink, but the leaky faucet, the sticky back door, and the wobbly porch step that Mason had casually mentioned. The boy had warmed considerably after extracting these promises, even slipping his small hand into Logan's as they walked back. Logan's security detail, which he'd reluctantly summoned after spotting a photographer across from the ice cream shop, maintained a discreet distance. When they entered the house, Olivia was on the phone, her expression tense. She quickly ended the call. You're back early, she noted, her eyes darting between them. Mr. Pierce is going to fix our sink, Mason announced. And he likes cookie dough too. Go wash up, honey, Olivia told him. When Mason disappeared down the hall, she turned to Logan. My landlord just called. Apparently my back rent was paid in full this morning, along with the next 6 months. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Logan met her gaze without apology. Would you prefer to be evicted? I'd prefer to be consulted, she countered, though her shoulders sagged with what looked like reluctant relief. I don't want your charity. It's not charity when it's for my children, Logan said firmly. He moved closer, lowering his voice. Olivia, you're about to be on bed rest. Mason needs stability. Let me help. Not because I'm trying to control you, but because you shouldn't have to do this alone anymore. Something in her expression softened. And when the press finds out? When your shareholders learn you have a secret family? Let them, Logan said with surprising conviction. Some things matter more than stock prices. For the first time since they'd reconnected, Olivia looked at him with something approaching trust. I'm not asking to move in, Logan clarified. But I am asking for a chance to be his father. And this baby's father, too. Olivia rested her hand on her swollen belly. She's a girl, by the way. I found out last week. A daughter, Logan whispered. The word foreign yet precious in his mouth. Outside, life continued. Empires ran, markets closed, board members waited impatiently. But in that small kitchen, something new was taking root, something no spreadsheet or quarterly report could quantify. 2 weeks later, Logan stood in Olivia's kitchen at dawn, staring blankly at the coffee maker, as if it were alien technology. In his penthouse, coffee appeared magically each morning, prepared by his housekeeper. Here, in this small duplex, he confronted a bewildering array of filters and buttons. You have to actually put water in it first, came Mason's amused voice. From behind him, Logan turned to find his son watching him, hair tousled from sleep, wearing Star Wars pajamas. The boy had grown more comfortable with Logan's presence, his initial wariness giving way to curiosity and occasional flashes of mischief. Right, Logan said, attempting to maintain dignity. I was just assessing the situation. Mason giggled, a sound that still startled Logan with its capacity to warm something long frozen within him. Mom says you're smart about business but dumb about regular stuff. Your mother may have a point, Logan conceded, filling the reservoir with water. He had split his time between worlds these past weeks, mornings and evenings here, days at Horizon Technologies managing a corporate empire, increasingly curious about his altered schedule. Victoria, his chief of staff, had gone from confused to suspicious to openly concerned. You have the Beijing conference call in 40 minutes, she had reminded him yesterday. And the board is asking questions about your absences. He'd handled it all with practiced efficiency, but the compartmentalization was becoming harder to maintain. Something would have to give. Logan managed to produce coffee just as Olivia appeared, moving slowly as her pregnancy advanced. The doctor had prescribed strict bed rest, but she still insisted on seeing Mason off to school each morning. The conquering hero defeats another household appliance, she teased, accepting the mug he offered. Their relationship had evolved into something cautiously cordial, not quite friendship, not quite co-parenting, but a fragile alliance centered on Mason's well-being. I need to tell the board, Logan said suddenly. About Mason, about the baby, about all of this. Olivia's expression tensed. Are you sure that's wise? It's necessary. The speculation is getting worse. I'd rather control the narrative than have some tabloid do it for us. The previous week, a business blog had run a piece questioning Logan's erratic behavior and mysterious personal matters. It was only a matter of time. Mason interrupted, tugging at Logan's sleeve. Can you take me to school today? Mom needs to rest. The simple request filled Logan with disproportionate pleasure. Of course. Remember his lunch, Olivia called, as they gathered Mason's things. And don't let him convince you he doesn't need a jacket. It's raining. Logan felt oddly touched by these mundane instructions, evidence he was being incorporated into their daily rhythm. Driving Mason to school in his Bentley had caused a stir the first time. Now the other parents merely raised eyebrows as the billionaire tech CEO held his son's backpack. listening intently to a detailed explanation of playground politics. "Dad, will you come to my class presentation next week?" Mason asked casually as they approached the school gates. Logan froze, the word "dad" echoing in his ears, the first time Mason had used it. "I wouldn't miss it," he managed, his voice strangely thick. Mason grinned and darted off with a quick hug that left Logan staring after him, momentarily disoriented by the force of his own emotions. Returning to the car, he found a text from Victoria. "Emergency board meeting called, 10 a.m. Subject, leadership concerns." So it had begun. The Empire was striking back. Logan adjusted his tie, mind already shifting to corporate strategy even as his heart remained at the school gate where his son had just called him Dad for the first time. Two worlds on a collision course, with everything he truly valued hanging in the balance. The Horizon Technologies boardroom fell silent as Logan entered. 12 faces turned toward him, some concerned, others calculating. The massive oak table gleamed under recessed lighting, the Seattle skyline a dramatic backdrop through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Gentlemen, ladies," Logan nodded, taking his seat at the head of the table. "I understand there are concerns." Victoria stood at the opposite end, her presentation already cued on the wall screen. Her usual immaculate composure seemed strained. "Logan," began Howard Reeves, the eldest board member, "we've known each other 15 years, so I'll be direct. There are rumors, distractions. Your focus appears compromised." Logan studied the faces around him. These were people who respected power, clarity, and control, qualities that had defined his leadership. They wouldn't understand his transformation without context. "Before Victoria begins her presentation on why I should be concerned about my own behavior," Logan said evenly, "I'd like to share something." He tapped his phone and the screen changed to a photo of Mason, taken yesterday in the backyard, laughing as he jumped through sprinklers. "This is my son," Logan stated simply. "Mason. He's 5. Until 2 weeks ago I didn't know he existed." The room erupted in murmurs. Victoria's face paled. "His mother is expecting my daughter in approximately 2 months." Logan continued, his voice steady despite the hammering in his chest. "These are not distractions, they are my children." Howard recovered first. "Logan, we all have personal lives, but the timing is inconvenient for our Taiwanese expansion," Logan finished. "For the neural interface launch? For stock prices?" Nods around the table. "I built this company from nothing," Logan reminded them. 16-hour days, sacrificing everything for growth, and I succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. He paused, gathering thoughts that had crystallized during sleepless nights on Olivia's couch. "But I've realized something. The ultimate disruption isn't technological. It's personal." The board members exchanged glances, clearly wondering if their visionary CEO had lost his edge. "I'm not stepping down," Logan clarified. "But I am restructuring my time, my priorities, my approach to leadership. The company will benefit from a CEO who understands there's more to life than quarterly reports." Victoria finally spoke, her voice tight. "The markets won't see it that way." "Then educate them," Logan countered. "Isn't that what our PR department does?" Visionary CEO embraces family values. "Make it work." She flinched at his tone. "Unless," Logan added carefully, "there's something else concerning the board? Something beyond my recent absences?" The tension in the room shifted subtly. Several members suddenly found their tablets fascinating. "Howard," Logan prompted. The older man cleared his throat. "The partnership with NeuroSync. There are questions about resource allocation, timeline viability." Logan's eyes narrowed. The neural interface project was his passion, revolutionary, technology that could help people with mobility impairments. It was also expensive, experimental, and years from profitability. "Victoria," Logan turned to his chief of staff, "you've been unusually quiet. Thoughts?" She squared her shoulders. "The board feels the project is consuming resources better allocated elsewhere. I've prepared an alternative roadmap." without consulting me. It wasn't a question. You've been unavailable. The pieces clicked into place. While he'd been learning to be a father, forces within his company had been mobilizing against his vision. I see, Logan said, his voice dangerously calm. He stood slowly. Meeting adjourned. We'll reconvene tomorrow after I've reviewed Victoria's roadmap. As the board members filed out, Logan remained standing, gazing at the Seattle skyline. 6 weeks ago, this view had represented everything he valued. Now it seemed strangely hollow compared to a small duplex across town where Olivia waited for his call, where Mason would return from school expecting help with homework. His empire was under threat. But for the first time, it wasn't his only priority. Victoria paused at the door. Logan, we need to talk. Yes, he agreed, not turning from the window. We certainly do. The overnight rain had transformed Olivia's small garden into a glistening oasis. Logan sat on the porch steps watching Mason splash through puddles, his business attire incongruous with the domestic scene. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages he was choosing to ignore. Dad, look how high I can jump, Mason called, leaping into a particularly large puddle that sprayed water in all directions. Logan smiled, the weight of the board meeting temporarily lifting. He'd spent the night reviewing Victoria's alternative roadmap, a clinical dismantling of his vision for the company disguised as fiscal responsibility. The betrayal stung, but not as much as it would have a month ago. The screen door creaked as Olivia eased herself outside, tea mug in hand. You look terrible, she observed, lowering herself carefully beside him. Board politics, Logan replied, watching Mason's acrobatics. Nothing I can't handle. That's your problem, Olivia said, blowing on her tea. You think you have to handle everything alone. Her insight struck him like a physical blow. His solitary approach to life, the very quality that had propelled him to success, suddenly seemed like a fundamental flaw. They want to kill the neural interface project, he admitted. It's too experimental, too costly with uncertain returns. The N1 for paralysis patients? Olivia's nursing background had given her a keen interest in the project when he'd explained it. But that could help thousands of people. Millions, eventually. But not for years. And not with guaranteed profit margins. Olivia studied his profile. What do you want, Logan? Not what the board wants or the shareholders or what you think you should want. What do you want? The question was so simple, yet it struck at the core of his current dilemma. Before he could answer, his phone rang, Richard Winter's number flashing on the screen. Pierce, he answered tersely. We've got trouble, Richard said without preamble. Someone leaked information about Mason to the press. It's going viral. Logan's blood ran cold. How bad? Photos of you taking him to school. Speculation about Olivia. They've got her name, work history. Someone did their homework. Logan's eyes snapped to Mason, blissfully unaware as he constructed a leaf boat to sail in a puddle. Lock it down, he ordered. Legal team on standby. I want to know who leaked it. He ended the call to find Olivia watching him, alarm evident in her expression. What's wrong? Someone leaked information about Mason to the press. About you. They'll be coming. The color drained from her face. Coming here? To our home? As if, in answer, Logan's phone pinged with an alert from his security team. 3 news vans just turned onto your street. Olivia stood shakily. Mason, come inside, honey. The boy looked up, confused by the urgency in his mother's voice. Now, please, she called, panic edging into her tone. Logan moved quickly to Mason's side, guiding him toward the house. They barely made it inside before the first news van stopped in front of the duplex. What's happening? Mason asked, sensing the tension. Logan exchanged a look with Olivia. How did you explain media intrusion to a 5-year-old? Some people are very interested in our family, Logan said carefully. They want to take pictures and ask questions. But we don't have to talk to them. Olivia peeked through the curtains. There are reporters on the lawns. Mrs. Garcia next door is yelling at them. Logan's phone rang again, Victoria this time. He silenced it without hesitation. We can't stay here, he said decisively. This will only escalate. Where would we go? Olivia asked, one hand protectively on her belly. I can't exactly hide. Logan looked at his family, Mason confused and frightened, Olivia pale with stress that couldn't be good for the baby. His competing worlds had collided, and in this moment the choice was brutally clear. I know a place, he said. Somewhere safe, somewhere no one would think to look for Logan Pierce. Outside, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Inside, a family huddled together, about to embark on an escape from a storm Logan's success had created. 3 hours and a private helicopter ride later, Logan stood on the porch of a weathered cabin overlooking Lake Chelan. The property, purchased through a shell company years ago as a potential development site, had remained untouched, a forgotten investment in his vast portfolio. Now its isolation made it invaluable. Inside, Olivia explored the rustic interior with Mason, who had recovered from his initial fear and now viewed their hasty departure as an adventure. It's dusty, Olivia observed, running a finger along a pine bookshelf, but solid. Logan nodded absently, phone pressed to his ear as Richard updated him on the situation they'd left behind. Media circus, Richard reported. TMZ, Seattle Times, even Bloomberg. Tech billionaire's secret family is trending. Your PR team is in meltdown. And Victoria, holding an emergency investor call, damage control. Logan ended the call and stepped onto the back deck where Mason had discovered a family of ducks navigating the lake's edge. Dad, look. The boy called, pointing excitedly. The simple word, Dad, still hit Logan with unexpected force each time Mason used it. Olivia appeared beside him, lowering herself carefully into an Adirondack chair. So this is your contingency plan? Hiding? In the woods? It's temporary, Logan assured her. Just until I deal with the situation. Which situation? The press, you're bored? The fact that your entire carefully constructed life just imploded? Her bluntness was one of the qualities that had drawn him to her 6 years ago. Her refusal to be intimidated by his position or wealth. Of it, he admitted, sitting beside her. I need to make some calls. Olivia caught his wrist before he could reach for his phone again. Logan, stop. Just stop. He stared at her, momentarily disoriented by the interruption to his problem-solving mode. Look around you, she said softly. Look at your son exploring, look at the mountains, the lake. When's the last time you actually stopped to just be present? Logan couldn't remember. His life had been a relentless march forward, always focused on the next acquisition, the next breakthrough, the next billion. Mason needs supervision by the water, he said, defaulting to practicality. Olivia smiled. Then go supervise him, not as Logan Pierce, CEO, just as Dad. Something in her gentle command freed him. Logan set his phone down and walked to where Mason was collecting pebbles along the shoreline. What are you finding? He asked, crouching beside his son. Treasure, Mason declared, holding up a smooth stone with flecks of mica that caught the sunlight. Is this real gold? Logan examined it seriously. Fool's gold, but still special. They spent the next hour building a rock dam in the shallows, Logan's expensive shoes and trousers soaked to the knees, his hands muddied from arranging stones. When Mason slipped and fell bottom first into the water, Logan's instinctive laughter surprised even himself. A genuine, unguarded sound he barely recognized. From the deck, Olivia watched them, a complex emotion playing across her face. Later, as Mason napped inside, exhausted from their lake expedition, Logan sat beside Olivia watching the afternoon light play across the water. I need to go back tomorrow, he said quietly. Face the board, deal with Victoria. Olivia nodded. I figured. But I'll come back, he promised. Every weekend, more if I can manage it. Until the novelty wears off, she asked, but without her earlier skepticism. Until I figure out how to merge these worlds permanently, Logan corrected. My life there, and what matters here. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the gentle lapping of waves against the shore and the distant call of an osprey hunting over the lake. "She kicked," Olivia said suddenly, placing a hand on her belly. "Do you want to feel?" Logan hesitated only briefly before placing his palm where she indicated. The firm pressure of his daughter's movement against his hand cemented his resolve more powerfully than any contract he'd ever signed. Some acquisitions weren't business, some were fate. The Horizon Technologies headquarters buzzed with tension as Logan strode through the lobby. Employees who normally greeted him with eager smiles now watched with poorly concealed curiosity. News of his secret family had dominated business channels for 48 hours. Logan had left Olivia and Mason at the lake cabin with security and provisions, promising to return in 3 days. The separation felt physical, like something tethered to his chest was being stretched thin with each mile. "Mr. Pierce." Victoria materialized beside him at the elevator. "The board is assembled, and legal needs to brief you before—" "Not now." Logan cut her off, stepping into his private elevator. She followed, her usual composure fracturing. "Logan, you can't just ignore this. The stock dropped 12 points yesterday. Shareholders are panicking." "About what exactly?" Logan asked, his voice dangerously calm. "That I have a family? Or that someone inside this company leaked private information about a 5-year-old child?" Victoria paled slightly. "We don't know who leaked it, don't we?" His gaze was steady, assessing. The elevator doors opened at the executive floor. Logan walked directly to the boardroom where 12 anxious faces turned toward him. On the wall screens, stock tickers scrolled with Horizon's declining share price. "Gentlemen, ladies." Logan took his position at the head of the table, not bothering to sit. "I'll be brief. I have a son, I have a daughter on the way. Their mother and I are figuring things out. End of story." Howard Reeves cleared his throat. "Logan, with respect, the manner of disclosure has damaged market confidence. The timing, with the NeuroSync decision pending—" "Let's discuss that timing," Logan interrupted. "How convenient that personal information about my family leaked. Precisely when I opposed the board's attempt to kill my neural interface project. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees." "That's a serious accusation," Howard said carefully. "It is," Logan agreed. "Almost as serious as the attempted corporate coup detailed in these documents." He placed a folder on the table. Inside were emails and meeting notes Richard had uncovered. Victoria and 3 board members plotting to use Logan's distraction to restructure the company's leadership. "You accessed private communications," Victoria said, voice tight with controlled fury. "As did you," Logan countered evenly. "When you ordered IT to monitor my calendar, emails, and car service logs after noticing my changed schedule. When you tracked my location to Olivia's address. When you compiled a dossier on my son." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. "You crossed a line," Logan continued, his voice deadly quiet. "Not a professional one. A human one. You exposed a child, my child, to media scrutiny for corporate leverage." Victoria's composure finally cracked. "You were throwing away everything we built, for some fling from 6 years ago and her kid." The room fell absolutely silent. "My son," Logan corrected softly, "and my daughter, my family." His phone vibrated in his pocket. Olivia's ringtone. He'd promised to never ignore her calls again. "Excuse me," he said, stepping toward the window as he answered. "Is everything okay?" Olivia's voice came through tight with tension. "Something's wrong. The baby. There's bleeding. The local doctor says I need a hospital." Logan's world narrowed to her voice. "I'm coming now. Have security bring you to Seattle Presbyterian. I'll meet you there." He ended the call and turned back to the stunned board. "This meeting is over. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. In you, not me. Emails with supporting evidence are already with major shareholders." "Logan," Howard began, "be reasonable. My family needs me," Logan said simply. "Everything else can wait." As he walked out, ignoring Victoria's calls behind him, Logan realized something profound had shifted within him. For the first time in his career, a boardroom crisis ranked second on his priority list. In the elevator, he called his helicopter pilot. Emergency medical transport from Lake Chelan to Seattle Presbyterian. Now. The market would panic. The board would fight back. His empire might crumble, and none of it mattered compared to Olivia and the babies, his daughter fighting to enter the world, and his son who had shown him what truly constituted wealth. The antiseptic smell of the hospital corridor assaulted Logan's senses as he raced toward the maternity wing. His helicopter had touched down on the rooftop landing pad just minutes earlier, his status opening doors that would remain closed to ordinary citizens. Olivia Mitchell, he demanded at the nurse's station, his voice betraying more emotion than he'd shown in any boardroom. She was brought in with pregnancy complications. The nurse glanced up, recognition flickering in her eyes. Room 307, Mr. Pierce, the doctor is with her now. Logan found the room easily, pausing at the threshold. Olivia lay in the hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily around her, pale but conscious. Mason sat in a corner chair, small legs dangling, clutching a tattered stuffed penguin and watching the medical staff with solemn eyes. Logan, Olivia breathed, relief washing over her features. He was at her side instantly, taking her hand. What happened? The baby? Placental abruption, explained a gray-haired doctor who'd been reviewing charts at Olivia's bedside. Partial separation which caused the bleeding. We've stabilized her condition, but we're monitoring closely. Is the baby? Logan couldn't finish the sentence. Strong heartbeat, the doctor assured him. But we're looking at immediate bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy. Ms. Mitchell will need to stay in the hospital for at least a week, possibly until delivery. Logan nodded, absorbing this information with the same intensity he applied to market forecasts. Whatever she needs. The best care, private room, specialists. Logan, Olivia interrupted softly, squeezing his hand. I'm okay. She's okay. He looked down at her, really seeing her. The exhaustion in her eyes. The fear she was working hard to conceal. The steadfast strength that had carried her through 6 years of single parenthood. Dad? Mason's small voice came from the corner. Is Mom going to be okay? Logan went to his son, kneeling to eye level. Yes, the doctors are taking very good care of her and your sister. But your mom needs lots of rest now, which means we need to be extra helpful. Think we can do that? Mason nodded solemnly, clutching his penguin tighter. I was scared in the helicopter. It was loud. I bet it was, Logan acknowledged, seeing the adventure through his son's eyes for the first time. You were very brave. The door opened, and Victoria stepped in, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. She froze when she saw the family tableau. I need to speak with you, she said to Logan. Urgently. Logan stood slowly, positioning himself between Victoria and his family. This isn't the time. It can't wait, she insisted. The Taiwanese investors have pulled out. Stockton Capital is considering a hostile takeover bid. The board has called an emergency session to vote on your removal. Logan felt Olivia's gaze on him, measuring his reaction. 6 weeks ago, this news would have triggered immediate crisis response, calls, meetings, strategic counters. Now it hardly registered against the beeping monitors tracking his unborn daughter's heartbeat. Victoria, he said quietly. Look, around this room. This is what matters. Not stock prices, not investors, not my position. You're just going to throw it all away? She asked incredulously. Everything we built? No, Logan replied. I'm choosing what to build next. Victoria's expression hardened. The board meets in an hour. Without you there to defend yourself, you know how this ends. Logan looked back at Olivia, then at Mason, who watched the adults with wary attention. Let me worry about Mason, Olivia said softly. Go do what you need to do. The permission surprised him. You're sure? She nodded. Some battles are worth fighting. I think you know which ones. Logan straightened, decision made. Victoria, Tell the board I'll address them. Not in person. Video conference. From here. Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. From a hospital room? From my family's side, Logan corrected, where I belong. After she left, Logan settled into the chair beside Olivia's bed, Mason climbing into his lap as if he'd been doing it his whole life. Your company, Olivia murmured. It's important too. Logan shook his head. It's just a company. This, he gestured to the three of them, plus the monitors tracking his daughter's heartbeat. This is everything. The impromptu boardroom Logan established in Olivia's hospital room consisted of his laptop perched on the adjustable bedside table, angled so the board members wouldn't see Olivia resting behind him. Mason had been temporarily enticed to the cafeteria with a nurse who had boys of her own, allowing Logan to focus on the confrontation ahead. Connecting now, Logan murmured, straightening his tie. He hadn't changed clothes in 24 hours, but his commanding presence remained intact. Screen filled with familiar faces seated around the mahogany table 12 miles away. Howard occupied the chairman's position, Logan's seat, a symbolic gesture not lost on him. Logan, Howard acknowledged stiffly. We appreciate you making time for this unusual meeting. Let's dispense with pleasantries, Logan replied. I understand there's a motion to remove me as CEO. Victoria leaned forward. In light of recent developments and significant market disruption, the board feels new leadership would restore investor confidence. Interesting, Logan said, his voice deceptively calm. And who would this new leadership be? The board has asked me to step in as interim CEO, Howard stated, with Victoria as COO, purely as a stabilizing measure. Logan nodded thoughtfully. On a monitor behind him, his daughter's heartbeat tracked steady and strong, a rhythmic reminder of what was truly at stake. Before you vote, Logan said, I'd like to share something. He tapped a key, and the presentation screen in the boardroom changed to display a complex neural mapping algorithm, the core of his interface project. 3 days ago, while you were planning my ouster, our research team achieved breakthrough, neural response in simulation. The interface works. Logan let that sink in. And I've secured private funding to continue development, regardless of the board's decision. Murmurs spread around the table. The neural interface wasn't just a passion project. If successful, it represented the next quantum leap in human-computer interaction. Private funding doesn't change the PR disaster or the market slide, Victoria countered. Your personal situation remains a liability. My family, Logan corrected firmly, is not a liability. And speaking of liabilities, he tapped another key displaying a new document. I've filed a civil suit this morning regarding the leak of private information about my minor son. The boardroom fell silent. The forensic evidence is quite compelling, Logan continued. Electronic fingerprints leading directly to unauthorized access of my personal calendar, location data, and subsequent compilation of information about Olivia and Mason. He didn't need to specify who had accessed the information. Victoria's rigid posture said everything. Logan, Howard interjected. Legal disputes between executives hardly inspire market confidence. I agree, Logan said smoothly. Which is why I'm offering an alternative. He outlined his proposal succinctly. He would step back from day-to-day operations, focusing exclusively on product development and innovation, his true strengths. A new COO would manage operations, reporting to both Logan and the board. The neural interface project would continue with private funding, keeping Horizon at the cutting edge. And Victoria? Howard asked cautiously. Logan's gaze hardened. Will tender her resignation effective immediately, non-negotiable. The board members exchanged glances, calculating new possibilities. Logan waited, listening to the steady beep of the fetal monitor, finding strength in its rhythm. Your counterproposal has merit, Howard finally conceded. The board will need to discuss privately. Of course, Logan agreed. You have 1 hour. After ending the call, He turned to find Olivia watching him, fully awake. "You heard all that," he said. Not a question. She nodded. "You're giving up CEO position? For us?" Logan moved to her side, taking her hand. "I'm not giving up anything important. Just restructuring priorities. But your company will thrive," he finished. "With or without me at the helm every day. But Mason needs a father who's present. Emma needs a dad who knows her. And you—" He hesitated, suddenly uncertain. "What about me?" Olivia asked softly. Logan's phone chimed with an incoming message, the board's decision arriving early. But for the first time in his career, he let a message wait. "You," he said carefully, "deserve someone who sees what I was too blind to see 6 years ago, that some things matter more than empire building." Before Olivia could respond, Mason burst through the door clutching a chocolate pudding cup, his entrance heralding the return of the real world, a world Logan was no longer running from. 3 weeks passed in a blur of hospital rooms, board transitions, and hesitant new beginnings. Logan's restructuring proposal had been accepted, though not without casualties. Victoria departed with a generous severance package and a binding non-disclosure agreement, while 2 board members resigned in protest. The media storm had gradually subsided, replaced by business analyses of Horizon's bold new direction and human interest pieces about the tech billionaire embracing fatherhood. Logan's PR team had masterfully reframed the narrative, though he cared less about public opinion with each passing day. Now he stood in the doorway of the hospital room that had become their strange temporary home, watching Olivia sleep. She'd been confined to bed rest for 23 days, the pregnancy stabilized but still precarious. Mason divided his time between the hospital, school, and occasional stays with Olivia's mother, who had flown in from Arizona to help. Logan's phone vibrated softly, a message from Howard about the transition timeline. He silenced it without reading further. The company would wait. The doctor was making rounds soon. "You're hovering again," Olivia murmured without opening her eyes. Logan smiled, still surprised by how she sensed his presence. "Just checking on you." She opened her eyes, shifting carefully against the pillows. 34 weeks pregnant now, every movement was deliberate. "Any word from the realtor?" He nodded, moving to her bedside. 3 properties to consider. All within 15 minutes of good schools, private enough for security, but nothing ostentatious. Finding a home that balanced his security needs with Olivia's desire for normalcy had become their latest negotiation. The cabin at Lake Chelan was too remote, his penthouse too cold and corporate, and her duplex too exposed after the media frenzy. "Not mansions, right?" she pressed. "I meant what I said about not raising them in some sterile showplace." "No mansions," Logan confirmed, "though I maintain that children benefit from adequate yard space." Their compromise vocabulary had evolved over weeks of hospital conversations. Adequate instead of expansive, sensible security, rather than compound-level protection. The door swung open as Mason barreled in, Olivia's mother Barbara following, more sedately. "Dad!" Mason exclaimed. "Grandma let me get 2 books at the store." He thrust a colorful dinosaur encyclopedia toward Logan, who examined it with exaggerated interest. Barbara gave Logan a nod that had gradually warmed from frigid to merely cool. Her initial skepticism about the billionaire who had suddenly appeared in her daughter's life was slowly yielding to grudging respect, though Logan suspected winning her complete approval would be a long-term project. "The nurse said Dr. Phillips is running late," Barbara informed them, settling into a chair and extracting knitting needles from her bag. The half-formed yellow blanket growing under her fingers was for Emma, a peace offering of sorts. Logan's phone vibrated again. Richard Winters this time. He stepped into the hallway to take the call. "Found something interesting in the financial forensics," Richard said without preamble. "Victoria wasn't just monitoring your schedule out of corporate concern. She's been systematically blocking contacts from Olivia for years." Logan's grip tightened on the phone. "Explain." "Emails, phone calls, even a certified letter 6 months after Mason was born, all intercepted. I have copies of everything." The revelation hit Logan like a physical blow. For 6 years, he'd believed Olivia had simply moved on, never tried to contact him. The truth was far more painful. She had reached out repeatedly while he remained oblivious, insulated by layers of staff and security. "There's more," Richard continued. "Victoria authorized a payment to Olivia's former supervisor to ensure her temporary position wasn't extended, effectively forced her out after she discovered the pregnancy." Logan closed his eyes, leaning against the hospital wall as the implications cascaded through him. So many lost years. So many moments he could never reclaim. "Send me everything," he said quietly. Returning to the room, Logan found Mason showing Olivia a dinosaur illustration, Barbara knitting rhythmically in the corner. This fragile, new family configuration, still finding its balance. "Everything okay?" Olivia asked, noting his expression. "Just work," he lied, unwilling to burden her with these revelations while her health remained precarious. The truth would keep for now. Today was about moving forward, not looking back at what had been stolen from all of them. The harsh fluorescent hospital lights flickered slightly as Logan paced the hallway outside Olivia's room. It was 2:37 a.m., and despite spending millions on the most advanced monitoring equipment and top specialists, he felt utterly powerless. Olivia had gone into labor 3 hours ago, 6 weeks early. Mason was asleep in the waiting room under Barbara's watchful eye, curled up beneath Logan's suit jacket. The boy had refused to leave the hospital despite Logan's gentle suggestions that he might be more comfortable at home with his grandmother. "Emma needs me here," Mason had insisted with the unshakable conviction of a 6-year-old. Dr. Phillips emerged from Olivia's room, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Pierce, we're going to prep for an emergency C-section. The baby's heart rate is showing concerning patterns, and with the previous abruption history, we don't want to take chances." Logan nodded, his throat tight. "And Olivia?" "She's scared but stable. She's asking for you." Inside the room, Olivia lay pale against the sheets, monitors beeping insistently around her. When she saw Logan, she reached for his hand. "So much for our birth plan," she attempted to joke, but fear edged her voice. Logan squeezed her fingers, studying the woman who had inadvertently changed everything about his life. 6 weeks ago, he'd been a solitary figure ruling an empire. Now he was here, terrified of losing the family he'd only just discovered. "Emma's just impatient to meet us," he said, striving for calm he didn't feel. "Takes after her father that way, always pushing timelines." Olivia's smile was weak but genuine. "Logan, if something happens—" "Nothing is going to happen," he interrupted, unable to entertain the possibility. "Listen to me," she insisted. "If you have to choose—" "I'm not having this conversation," Logan said firmly. "The best medical team in the country is here. You're both going to be fine." Before she could respond, nurses entered to prepare her for surgery. Logan was ushered out with promises he could join her once they'd administered the spinal block. In the hallway, he found himself doing something he hadn't done since childhood. Praying. Not to any specific deity, but to whatever forces might be listening, pleading for the safety of Olivia and his daughter. His phone vibrated. Howard, with questions about the Asian market strategy that suddenly seemed absurdly trivial. Logan switched the phone off entirely. An unprecedented act for a man who had built an empire on constant connectivity. When they finally allowed him into the operating room, gowned and masked, he took his place beside Olivia's head. The surgical team worked efficiently behind a blue drape, their quiet professional murmurs punctuated by the steady beep of monitors. "Talk to me," Olivia whispered, eyes fixed on his. "Distract me." Logan began speaking about the house he'd chosen, not the modern lakefront mansion the realtor had pushed, but a craftsman-style home on 2 acres, with a treehouse potential in the massive oak out back. He described the garden where they could grow vegetables, the kitchen where Mason could help cook, the window seat where Olivia could read nursing journals once she resumed her studies. He painted their future in words, a life so different from the sterile luxury he'd once occupied, a vision of something richer and more meaningful than he'd ever imagined for himself. "She's here," Dr. Phillips announced, and seconds later a thin cry filled the operating room. Emma Catherine Pierce entered the world at 3:14 a.m., 5 pounds 3 ounces, with a determined wail that belied her tiny size. When the nurses placed her on Olivia's chest for that first precious skin-to-skin contact, Logan found himself unable to speak, overcome by a wave of emotion more powerful than anything he'd experienced in 42 years of life. "She has your chin," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face. That stubborn Pierce chin. Logan gently touched his daughter's miniature hand, marveling when her fingers instinctively curled around his. In that moment, looking at Olivia cradling their daughter, he understood with perfect clarity what he needed to do next. The Empire could wait. This could not. 1 year later, Logan stood on the back porch of the Craftsman house watching Mason demonstrate his newest skateboard trick for Barbara and her husband Frank, who had relocated from Arizona to be closer to their grandchildren. The autumn afternoon painted everything in golden light, leaves from the massive oak drifting lazily to the ground. Inside, he could hear Olivia singing softly to Emma, who at 12 months old had her father's determined expression and her mother's gentle laugh. The sound drifted through open windows, along with the scent of the apple pie Barbara had insisted on baking, despite Olivia's protests that their guests wouldn't expect homemade desserts. But this wasn't just any gathering. Today marked 1 year since they'd brought Emma home from the NICU after her 3-week stay. 1 year since their improvised family had truly begun. Logan's phone buzzed in his pocket, a rare occurrence these days, as he'd ruthlessly reconfigured his accessibility. He checked the screen, Howard, with the quarterly results. The message was brief but satisfied. The neural interface project had passed clinical trials, with paralyzed patients now able to control prosthetic limbs using only their thoughts. Horizons stock had hit an all-time high. He slipped the phone back into his pocket without responding. Success tasted different now, measured in moments rather than millions. Contemplating the Empire from afar, Olivia's voice came from behind him. She stepped onto the porch, Emma balanced on her hip, the baby's gray eyes, Logan's eyes, taking in the world with solemn curiosity. "Just enjoying the view," Logan replied, accepting Emma into his arms. She immediately grabbed for his watch. Her newest fascination, Olivia leaned against the porch railing, studying him. "You miss it sometimes, don't you? The boardroom battles, the adrenaline of closing big deals." "Parts of it," he admitted. 3 days a week at Horizon was enough now. His role focused on innovation and strategy rather than day-to-day operations. "But I don't miss who I was." And it was true. The man who had driven through Seattle that rainy night, isolated, empty despite his success, was a stranger to him now. "Incoming," Mason called, racing up the porch steps. "Dad, did you see my—" "Ollie, Grandpa Frank said it was epic." Logan grinned. "Absolutely epic. But remember our deal. Helmet stays on, even for demonstrations." Mason nodded seriously, accepting this compromise between his adventurous spirit and Logan's protective instincts. "Mom," the boy turned to Olivia, "can I show Dad what's in the garage now? Please?" Olivia checked her watch. "The guests will be here in 20 minutes. Make it quick." Logan raised an eyebrow, but allowed himself to be led away, Emma still in his arms. Whatever Mason had been conspiring with Olivia about had been a closely guarded secret for days. The garage, originally intended for Logan's car collection, had been converted into a multi-purpose space. Mason dragged him to a canvas-covered shape, in the corner. "Ready?" the boy asked, bouncing with excitement. "It's for your birthday." "My birthday isn't for 2 weeks," Logan reminded him. "We couldn't wait," Mason declared, pulling the canvas away with a flourish. Beneath it stood an ornate, wooden rocking chair lovingly restored, on the backrest carved in flowing script, "For the stories yet to come." "It was my great-grandfather's," Olivia explained, appearing in the doorway. "For when you read to them at night." Logan ran his hand over the smooth wood, something catching in his throat. He'd spent a lifetime accumulating possessions that meant nothing. This chair, This simple wooden chair meant for bedtime stories was worth more than all of them. "We're a real family now," Mason stated with certainty, leaning against Logan's side. Emma babbled in agreement, patting her father's cheek with a tiny hand. Logan looked at the three of them, Mason, Emma, Olivia, and felt the final piece of himself slide into place. The empire he'd built paled in comparison to what he'd found that rainy night. Not an obligation or a responsibility, but a chance at the one thing his wealth could never buy. A family. His family. "Yes," Logan agreed, his voice thick with emotion as he pulled them close. "We are."